The air over Bethpage Black still trembled long after the final putt dropped. The New York crowd, wild and unfiltered, erupted into a storm that felt less like a celebration and more like a release of something raw. Flags waved, chants roared, and flashes of red, white, and blue filled the September twilight. It should have been a triumph, the kind of moment that would echo through golf's proud history. But instead, beneath the cheers, there was a murmur, a question. Had golf just crossed a line it could never return from? The Ryder Cup has always been more than a tournament. It's golf's heartbeat where pride, rivalry, and respect meet. But in 2025, something cracked. The jeers were louder than the applause, the insults sharper than the competition. Cups were thrown, tempers flared, and even the most seasoned legends stood stunned. What should have been a showcase of sportsmanship had turned into a spectacle of chaos. Tom Watson, once the face of Ryder Cup honor, said he was ashamed of what he saw, offering a rare public apology on behalf of American fans. That word ashamed hung in the air like a bruise no one wanted to touch. It made even the faithful stop and wonder, had the sports class been swallowed by its own passion? Then came Gary Player, blunt, fearless, and furious. The 9-time major winner called it the worst event in the world. Not because of the golf, but because of what surrounded it. He said the noise drowned out the grace, the anger smothered the art. His words struck a nerve, cutting through the noise with surgical precision. The Ryder Cup had not just been played, it had been exposed. And suddenly, it wasn't only about who won or lost, it was about what the game itself had become. If the legends were losing faith, what was left to believe in? The headlines came fast, the debates faster. Fans defended, critics condemned. Golf's perfect image, quiet, orderly, noble, was fractured. The 2025 Ryder Cup hadn't crowned a hero, it had revealed a crisis. And while the world argued, one man stayed silent until now. When the dust of Bethpage settled and the headlines began to fade, one voice remained missing, the voice that had defined an era. Tiger Woods watched the chaos of the 2025 Ryder Cup not from the fairways, but from afar. Cameras caught glimpses of him at home in Jupiter, quiet, reflective, a world away from the noise that consumed the tournament. It wasn't that Tiger didn't care, it was that he knew when silence spoke louder than words. And for a while, his silence became the loudest sound in golf. Everyone wondered what he was thinking. Months earlier, Woods had already shocked fans by turning down the U.S. captaincy. According to PGA Tour reports, he said he couldn't dedicate the time the role demanded, his body was still healing. His commitments with the Tour and TGL project were relentless. It was a practical decision, but fans didn't see it that way. To many, Tiger's no felt like more than scheduling. It felt symbolic. As if the greatest player of the modern age was quietly stepping back from the mess golf had made of itself. Was he protecting his legacy, or making a statement without saying a word? In truth, Tiger's relationship with the Ryder Cup has never been simple. The Express resurfaced his old words from 1999 when he'd called the event an exhibition. Back then, people saw it as arrogance, a young champion too focused on individual glory. But now, in hindsight, those comments hit differently. Maybe he wasn't dismissing the cup, maybe he was warning it. Warning what could happen when ego, spectacle, and noise replaced respect. The same noise that now defined Bethpage. Was Tiger's old prophecy finally coming true? For months, he said nothing, no statement, no tweet. Just silence, deliberate, disciplined, unnerving. Fans filled that silence with theories. Some thought he was furious, others believed he was heartbroken. But those who knew him best saw something else: composure. Tiger wasn't absent, he was waiting. Waiting for the world to quiet down enough to actually hear him. And when he finally spoke, his words didn't echo, they cut. When Tiger Woods finally broke his silence, it wasn't in front of flashing cameras or a roaring audience. It was in his quiet, deliberate way, calm voice, steady gaze, no theatrics. He spoke not to defend anyone, but to remind everyone. Golf, he said, has always been a game of respect for the course, for your opponent, and for yourself. There was no anger, no accusation, just a steady truth that cut through months of chaos. It wasn't noise that people heard that day, it was clarity. He acknowledged the tension, the crowd behavior, and the disappointment that defined Bethpage. But Tiger didn't point fingers. Instead, he turned the lens back on everyone who loves the sport. "We all share responsibility," he said, "to keep the game what it's always been, something honorable." For him, the problem wasn't passion, it was the loss of restraint, the surrender to impulse. He called on players, fans, and even officials to reclaim golf's dignity, a phrase that would echo across clubhouses and press rooms for weeks. In an age of noise, Tiger was asking for quiet. He praised Luke Donald's poise under pressure, a subtle nod to leadership rooted in calm, not chaos. Without naming names, Woods made his point. Greatness doesn't shout, it breathes. His tone wasn't nostalgic, it was urgent. He warned that if golf traded grace for spectacle, it would lose something far more valuable than trophies. "You can't build legacy on disrespect," he said softly. The line felt less like commentary and more like creed. It was Tiger, the philosopher of discipline, returning to protect the soul of his sport. In that moment, the narrative shifted. Fans who had spent months debating the behavior at Bethpage suddenly had something higher to focus on: integrity. Woods didn't give the sport answers, he gave it a mirror. And in that reflection, golf saw not just its mistakes, but its potential to be better. Tiger hadn't just spoken his mind, he'd reminded golf of its conscience. Tiger's words rippled through the game like a soft tide turning stone. Within days, other legends followed, not to contradict him, but to echo what they'd long felt. Tom Watson, still shaken from the scenes at Bethpage, called Woods' message a breath of truth the game needed. For Watson, it was redemption, a bridge between shame and accountability. He said, "We can't change the crowd overnight, but we can change the example we set." It was a humble concession from one of golf's proudest guardians. The old guard wasn't angry anymore, they were ready to rebuild. Gary Player, whose earlier outburst branded the event the worst in the world, softened his tone after Tiger's comments. He admitted his frustration came from love for a game that once demanded decorum. "Tiger reminded us what golf means," he said, "and maybe we all needed reminding." His words carried a tone of reflection rather than rage. Player, once furious, now sounded hopeful. Even the loudest critics found calm in Tiger's honesty. Jack Nicklaus, ever the voice of legacy, added his weight to the movement. In an interview with Sports Illustrated, he reflected on Tiger's statement with admiration. "That's what leadership looks like," Nicklaus said. "Not volume vision." He proposed new standards, more authority for referees to control fan behavior, clearer codes of conduct for both spectators and players. The conversation was changing. What had begun as outrage was becoming reform. The game was beginning to listen to itself again. Together, these voices, Watson, Player, Nicklaus, formed a chorus of wisdom, anchored by Woods' calm conviction. Across social media, podcasts, and practice greens, a new phrase surfaced: protect the game. It wasn't a slogan, it was a mission. Golf's legends had turned frustration into purpose, criticism into stewardship, and as their message spread, something long forgotten began to stir the quiet pride that once defined the game. Maybe the 2025 Ryder Cup wasn't golf's fall from grace, maybe it was its wake-up call. What happened at Bethpage, with its chaos and confrontation, stripped the sport bare. But in that vulnerability, something powerful began to grow. It wasn't about blame anymore, it was about responsibility, a shared one. Tiger Woods' words didn't accuse, they awakened. They reminded fans, players, and leaders that golf's greatness was never in its noise, but in its quiet strength. Sometimes, the only way to heal a tradition is to break it open first. In the weeks that followed, a strange calm settled over the sport. You could feel it in locker rooms, in practice ranges, in the way commentators spoke with a little more care. Players started shaking hands longer, fans started cheering softer. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The honesty of legends like Woods, Nicklaus, and Watson had become the mirror golf needed to see itself clearly again. For once, the headlines weren't about controversy or chaos, they were about reflection. The noise was fading, and in its place, respect was making a quiet return. The PGA of America began talks about new guidelines, real authority for marshals, stricter codes for crowd conduct, better mental health resources for players. These weren't punishments, they were promises. Promises that the sport would protect what made it special, its integrity. Tiger's calm conviction had done what no trophy could. It restored belief. Not just in the players, but in the spirit that holds them together. Golf wasn't just recovering, it was remembering who it was. And then, in one of those quiet moments that only golf can create, the cameras caught him, Tiger Woods, walking the practice fairway at dusk. Bag over his shoulder. No fans, No applause. Just the rhythm of his steps and the wind in the trees. The sun sank behind him, the light golden, the air still. His words echoed softly, almost like prayer. For Tiger Woods, honesty isn't about judgment, it's about protecting the game he loves. And maybe that's how golf finds its way back to grace.